Now I know what you're thinking. Season 5 of the film score is over, and Season 6 hasn't started up. So what are we doing here? Well, sometimes an interview comes across my virtual desk that I really don't want to pass up. Today's case in point. I'm joined by Daniel Lopatin, who also creates music under the name Oneohtrix Point Never, to talk about his score for the, as of right now, upcoming film Marty Supreme. Comes out on December 25th, so most listeners, it's already out, and I'd say definitely check it out. Marty was probably the most fun I've had seeing film this year, at least a 2025 film, and in large part that's due to Daniel's score. It's really eclectic, eccentric, and propulsive, finding these small moments to really swell and drive the film, drive the motion, drive the emotion. And, at least from my humble view, probably becomes one of the highlights of Daniel's career. So definitely keep those ears open for when the score drops, very soon. So naturally, Daniel and I talk about Marty Supreme, his score, and, as always, dive into a bunch of different tangents. It's a quick interview, so we can't cover too much, but still manage to pack quite a bit in. And, no matter what you might be thinking, Season 6, still a ways away. This is just a little palate cleanser, way to satisfy your appetite a little bit. I might have one or two more of these coming out over the next month or two before Season 6 kicks off again sometime, probably in the spring. Again, we'll see. But until then, sit back and enjoy. Daniel, thank you so much for joining me today. How have you been?
Of course, I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And normally I wouldn't ask about this, but because the Golden Globe nominations were announced like 2 hours ago, is that something that you pay any attention to? Do the film awards have, like, meaning necessarily? Or is that just, if you make it, great. If not, your life goes on?
It's one of those things where I'm easy come, easy go in a lot of ways in my life, or else I'll just kind of get too overinvested and hyped up. I have a kind of like the eagerness of a little child at
Mm,
times. So I think over the years I've sort of curbed my expectations about sort of, I don't know, external gratification that way or something like that. Of course, it's nice when you're recognized, but it's really just beginning
mm,
for Marty Supreme. I realize a lot of people haven't even seen it. It's not out for another couple weeks, and when people really sink their teeth into this thing and see it, they'll know. That's what feels the best to me is the secret screening we had at Alice Tully Hall at New York Film Festival, where I had never sat in an audience and witnessed the film that way. It was the first time I had been just amongst people who were experiencing it for the first time, and that kind of excitement and the nervousness, and then around, the 5 minute mark, you get the first laugh, and then, oh, okay, this is a comedy actually in some ways, and they're starting to kind of get enveloped in the film and go along for the ride. That is what I live for. I live for sitting in a theater and being dwarfed by this huge image on screen and being absorbing everything and being in the moment with a film or a piece of art.
I so agree on the theatrical experience. I was almost late to my showing of Marty Supreme, so I think I sat in the second row, like, kind of shitty seats. And right when I sat down before it started, I was like, oh, my neck's gonna ache and everything's gonna be warped and blah, blah, blah. And then within like 30 seconds, it doesn't matter. You get so enveloped in the screen, the picture, everything going on, the music as well. It's kind of similar to a concert where just
Yeah.
having it performed in front of you. Obviously, it's not live in the film, but with the crowd, everything just really, like, you get swept up in it. And so I do wonder, because there's so much conversation about film and how it should be seen in theaters, and especially now with, the Warner Brothers potential acquisition and all that, like,
Mhm.
watching things at home is becoming increasingly prevalent. Do you think that also applies to hearing a score? Because it's obviously so different in a theater's speakers versus at home, on your laptop, whatever.
Well, it can be. It's certainly, as you know, it's not a one size fits all kind
Mm-hmm.
of situation. There's scores that work really beautifully as a kind of a counterpart that's almost kind of atmosphere or it's undergirding something or it's very quiet or there's so many different kind of ways to approach sound mix, then all of them are kind of equally interesting if they serve the perspective of the filmmaker in a good way. So, the grass is always greener for me. I'm like I was watching Jay Kelly
Mm,
in the hotel and I was like, oh, would it be so nice to do a kind of a gentle score with lots of room and stuff like that and just kind of it almost sounds to me like, and I don't know, I should ask Nicholas, but it almost sounds to me like he may have recorded a lot of different piano music sort of almost on its own, and then it just
mm.
has this way of almost wafting through like smoke. And I enjoyed it. I thought it was really cool. That's certainly not what we did on this
Yeah,
one,
yeah, yeah.
but one of the great things about Marty, amongst many things I really enjoy about it, is, to your point, it's an incredible hurricane of sensory stimulation, but never in a kind of a overwhelming or painful way. And I have to give Skip, the sound engineer and mixer, a lot of credit for putting everything in balance and making it kind of a comfortable but nervous atmosphere, the crowds, the contrasting elements of the Lower East Side, how maximalist and how loud and intense it is, and then you're shot into the quiet of the opulence of Fifth Avenue and Milton Rockwell's world up there. So a lot of credit has to be given to Skip because he knows how to make those rooms really or make the films really shine in rooms like that. We defer to him completely. He has the utmost perspective on what it's going to mean to sit down in a theater and enjoy yourself audibly, and he's incredible at it.
I'm really annoyed that you used the term maximalist specifically because that's exactly what I was thinking. But it's an interesting contrast of maximalism because you have a score like Daniel Pemberton's Spider-Verse scores, which are really maximalist, but in a way where it's very constant music. And in Marty Supreme, it's almost like bursts where there are
Mm.
moments where there's not really a lot of music and then it comes in and it starts to swell and then it overwhelms you and then it disappears again. And I think that gives so much punch to the music, but also to the sequences that you're scoring because they're so intertwined and they build off each other so much.
Yeah, that dynamism is really, really a key ingredient in never allowing the tragedy of a score getting ahead of the audience, sort of telling them what to do or kind of coaxing them into an emotional feeling. I think you have to approach it in an almost kind of radical way. A lot of the lessons I learned in scoring films, I actually took away from a session with Brian Reitzel where we were, well, at the time, I think we might have been working on a television show. This is years ago, maybe
Mm.
2012 or something, but he really took me under his wing and mentored me a little bit. And he was, he's Sofia Coppola's longtime music supervisor and composer. So he kind of took me under his wing and said, "Hey, like, how would you score this scene in?" It was a television show called Boss with Kelsey Grammer that I don't think anybody remembers or saw, but it was a. I remember it very well because I it taught me so much. But finding kind of pockets of musical time around dialogue, around an event, to kind of like a plinth that holds the action in a way as opposed to kind of speaking to it directly or mirroring it, thinking of the score as a kind of unconscious undergirding instead of this thing that's there to simply tell you how to feel. I mean, all of those lessons seem so obvious to me now, but at the time you really don't know until you try. So I'm very grateful to Brian to this day for teaching me some of those things.
It does go to I guess, a complaint that some people will have of like the existence of music for film or TV shows or other media that there's like an inherent manipulation in it. And whether it's telling someone to feel overtly or undergirding what's going on or really anything, if you have a theme for a character and you change it from a major to a minor key, like that is telling something. And it seems like in a way that's just inherent in the craft no matter what.
There's opportunities to play kind of idiomatically into some of these cliched kind of things that I definitely watched a lot of Karate Kid and Rocky and stuff like that from Marty Supreme. And believe me, they hit you over the head with the feeling, and that's part of the appeal and the fun of a sports film. Now,
Hmm.
Marty isn't just, it doesn't really adhere to any one genre for too long before jumping into something else, and that's its kind of its magic. It at one moment it's a comedy, at another moment there's this kind of bizarre love triangle romantic thing happening. That there's it's an adventure story, not unlike, I mean, I always say that it's remarkable that they didn't have the graphic of the airplane going from one country to another with the red dots, because it has that kind of quality of a kind of like a big adventure movie. So I can't say that I don't appreciate and enjoy some of those cliches from prior scores. They became cliche because they were so incredibly effective, and researching them is really fun. And then maybe throwing them all in a hat and pulling them out at random is also fun, because there's really not anyone saying there's a right way here. It was just Josh and I trying to honor each cue is like a little mini art project, and we're just obsessed with it. And every single one has its own kind of patina, and we have the trust to know that the total score will have a kind of coherence to it, simply because we understand where we're going, we understand the heart and soul of the movie, and so that frees us to kind of work in this individual way on these cues that almost sound like we're jumping around in a postmodern way from cue to cue.
And is that also how you landed on it being like a fully anachronistic score? This film's set in, was it 1952, early 1950s? You're mentioning Rocky, which came out in the late 70s, Karate Kids the 80s. But also, I mean, it's a very synth-based score in general. I go back and forth because a lot of people really love this idea of if it's set in a time period, everything should kind of cohere with that. And then, like, I watched Gladiator 2 last year, and Denzel is like just being Denzel. And in my view, it works not just fine, he's the best part of the film. So
Yes.
it doesn't matter.
There was probably a day or two where there was some text messages back and forth between Josh and I saying, should we adhere to the period at all? But even that would quickly turned into, let's pick a few elements, period elements. And it was really intuitive. It wasn't particularly clear to me what we were coming up with when we were coming up with it. I think we were just kind of having fun hashing it out. But Josh really cleverly wanted classical elements on the score. Again, I didn't really know why, but it made sense as we went along, because for me, the classical elements of the score, they kind of represent the world at large for this
Hmm.
character that he has to traverse. And it's a world of rules and limitations and regulations, and it's a labyrinth. And that my mind automatically kind of goes to classical music. Now, I am not classically trained, so I'm just kind of pulling rabbits out of hats in various ways to get there. So I always put neo in front of classical because that's what it sounds like to me. That's what it sounds like to me. But that was really, really an interesting way to create an environment or a landscape. And then I think of Marty Mauser as a sort of 80s synthesizer component
Hmm.
driving through that landscape, creating an image of himself in the future that drives him, that is like his internal combustion engine to make his way through the world, but also to define himself in contrast to the world around him. I'm not you guys. I'm something new. I have a clear goal and a clear purpose, and nobody can really shake that. Inversely, people don't really understand in the movie what he is and how to deal with him, because he's kind of from the future. On top of all of that, I really, really enjoy that. To your point about Denzel, I think Timmy does a very similar thing here. I think there's a Timminess to what's going on that enhances the film, and that's just really, really clever writing and casting. It's an amazing film about so many things, but I think one of them is really about striving for greatness while never sort of risking giving up your sense of self or your integrity. It's kind of about artistic integrity in a way. And so yeah, those contrasting kind of elements of the score are there to support it on some level.
Hmm. And going to the classical aspect, and even you kind of like hedged it, being like, I'm not classically trained. I was reading an article that the LA Times had done on the score, particularly about you, and Josh a little bit as well. And I think like they labeled you, maybe it's in the header of it, something like a synth artist. And you see that type of labeling thrown around on a lot of artists that make electronic music. And in one sense, it feels like it's putting them in a different bucket as if it's like a different medium. And at the same time, there are the classical elements. You hear a track like Holocaust Honey, which sounds to me like something that Wendy Carlos might have done during, Switched on Bach. So it just feels like the viewpoint of, synth music kind of being on its own is, it seems like it's putting up a wall that shouldn't exist or doesn't exist.
It's reductive a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I know what you mean. I've seen these things, these headlines for years now, and I'm very lucky that I've seen bad headlines about myself or something. I don't find this particular one to be too offensive, but headlines always sort of, I find like they're either trying to kind of coax you to read the thing or put into the most common denominator terms what you're dealing with. And I kind of know what they mean. I've never heard myself referred to as a synth artist, actually, but I suppose I am. I think the unique thing about my writing is that I do have a little bit of my parents, respectively, kind of passed down two very different sides of music to me. My dad is kind of, I don't think he would describe himself this way, but he was kind of an improviser. He used his ears. He had a synthesizer. He used it for gigs, and he loved rambunctious like rock and roll. I mean, he just loved the Beatles, and he loved crazy electronic jazz fusion records, electric jazz fusion records, and stuff like that. So I got that from him. And on the other side, you have my mom, who's classically trained and was a musicologist in the Soviet Union before they came over. And I got a little bit of know-how from her too. I got through until about Mozart's minuets or something like that. I was in jazz lab band in
Hmm.
middle school. I had some ability and inclination to understand harmony, or at least the G clef, or work with my right hand as a melodic, instrument. Bass clef, maybe not, but I had enough there that got me going. And I think what's really strange is that was a big part of their life before they immigrated. And they come over and they both end up working in computers
Hmm.
out of necessity. And so that's like the weird third ingredient. And I wish it was different actually, because I wish I was more kind of rebellious or something, but I'm sort of the product of those three ingredients in a really bizarre roundabout way. I ended up finding my way through into music through those three elements. So I see synth artists and I just think like, okay, it's somebody that works with music and technology in an interesting way. And I think that's a pretty fair assessment.
Hmm. Yeah, and look, to the LA Times credit, I think it was a good article. So
It
I don't
was,
I don't think
yeah.
there was anything like,
It
offensive or
was
anything like
really
that.
lovely,
Yeah.
actually. It was really nice.
And so I guess one aspect of that, because it's an accidental lead in, but the focus is typically those articles are on the film, on the composer, but that one also has a lot of Josh in there too, Josh Safdie.
Yeah.
So it's the third film that you've done with him, the first with him on his own, prior
Mm.
to with his brother Benny. So how has that relationship changed, and how is the working relationship between the two of you?
For me, it's almost completely the same
Hmm.
because Josh and I were always in the soup together. He took a real interest and he has an incredible inclination for getting involved in all the departments, but he was really there with me in the soup for those last two scores, and that's how we kind of developed our language. And working with Benny was great too. I got to help out with the curse, which was awesome. I hooked him up with Nala, who's an
Hmm.
incredible composer in her own right. Actually, originally she was meant to work on the curse and she was unavailable. And it all worked out beautifully because John Medeski came in and I got to essentially kind of shepherd. I mean, it sounds crazy to say because John Medeski is like one of my childhood heroes, but to shepherd him into that world of film score and
Hmm.
work on cues together on Benny's show and Nathan's show was amazing. So I think they're pretty happy because they get to kind of go off respectively and do the things that they really want to do. and I care about them both. But Josh and I have been a team for a really long time,
Mm.
and not much has really changed there.
So you weren't able to take the Carter Burwell route and score for each of them individually?
I mean I would offer my services if it worked out. There's absolutely no there's no tension there. I feel like one of the things I want to do maybe in general, who knows, in the next time either of them will be doing something and I'll be available, might be years. So what do I do in the meantime? I would really love to score a film with another great director. It's hard to imagine actually, but I think it would be an interesting challenge and just a kind of a refreshing thing to do next.
I mean, I think that that would be really interesting because it's I mean, kind of like Bobby Krilic did his first two or three scores, maybe with Ari Aster, and then eventually was able to work with other directors. I think he scored a game as well, and so it's cool hearing an artist like that continually branch out. I'm sure, as long as you're available, it'll be the same thing. But I do want to say, no shade meant to Nala because I think her score for Smash Machine was really good and maybe one of the more
It's
overlooked ones of the
beautiful.
year. Yeah.
It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful.
All right, so we've only got a couple minutes. One thing that caught my eye that I wanted to ask about is in the credits, the end credits in the music section. And unfortunately, whenever I'm in the theater for an interview, I'm always taking notes. But because I'm in the theater, I can't read what I'm writing.
Mm.
So I almost have no idea what I've written about it. But there's
That's funny.
you should see like the
Those
pictures
pads
of it.
must be funny. Yeah,
It's
you should hang them in an
nonsense.
art gallery.
But in the music section, someone's credited for things like force of nature and locomotion. What are those?
Oh, our funny little credits.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is when we were doing the credits, it might have been the most stressful couple days of the entire thing because it was the end of sound mix and a day before the secret screening at New York Film
Mm,
Festival, and we were all in a kind of a fugue state. I love that it says extreme gratitude because that's so much better than special thanks.
yeah.
Special thanks is like what, you give your doctor maybe or something like that. Extreme gratitude is what you really feel. And I love that. That was not my idea. I just got jealous. I was like, wait, why can't the music department have extreme gratitude too? But I love that. That seems so to me like something Ronnie Bronstein came up with. I'll ask him later. But we gave Josh some credit. I think we gave him snake bite credit. Snake biting is a term that he came up with back in Good Time, which basically just means I want a big transient spike. I want something really, really to cut through the
Mm.
mix right there. You'd have to tell me because I need to take a look at it again. But if was Force of Nature, was that maybe assigned to Laraji? Do you remember?
I don't
Did someone
remember.
else?
So I know there was someone that had three different things credited to them, and I know that two of them were force of nature and locomotion. The third, unfortunately, is unintelligible in my notes.
I think it might be Josh. Locomotion is an interesting story if you have a second. We were working and it was probably hour 500 and we are kind of just messing around on the keyboard. By we, I mean my score producer Nathan Salen, Josh, and I were just sitting in what we lovingly refer to as a fishbowl, this tiny little room where we made this thing. Probably just trying to get a little rise out of him or make him laugh. We were all really tired. Josh's wife was pregnant. There was so much stress and so much excitement all at the same time. And I was in the effects category of this synthesizer, and there was like basically like train Foley. And I said, "Hey Josh, check it out. It's a real train." And I play the train sound, and I go, "Do you love it?" And he said, "Yeah." I go, "Okay, that's love on a real train." And which of course is the risky business cue that. So Josh actually got really excited and was like, "We gotta find a way to use the real train." Not because we were it was such a funny way to homage Tangerine Dream. It was like, it had nothing to do with the Q Love on a Real Train from Risky Business. It was just literally our love of a real train. And we found a little place to kind of sneak it in there. It was almost like more in Skip's department than the score department because it's like, what's going on here? Is it part of the rhythm of the cue or is there just a train path? Is the JMZ off in the distance or something? one of my favorite moments in the score for sure.
Oh, I love it. Well, a good Easter egg now for people when they're
Yeah.
watching it on, was it Christmas Day release?
It is, yes, Christmas Day.
Awesome. Well, Daniel, I appreciate you jumping on talk with me. I appreciate your time and loved the film, loved the score.
Thanks so much.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.